Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Home to Self
Mm.
podcast. I am so excited to be recording in person with the beautiful Tanin. Hi, Tanin.
Hi.
Welcome.
I'm so excited.
I'm so excited. I'm so excited to have you on.
Mm.
We're just going to flow with it today. We're going to dive into a few different topics that have been alive for us that we have been moving through in our own lives around community and healing and relationships, and we'll see where else it takes us. But these are some of my favorite conversations that are just unscripted, unplanned, and there's just a lot that is coming through for us. And I think to start, I would love to share a little bit about our connection and how we met, and from there we'll get into community and all of that good stuff. So first and foremost, just introduce yourself for the listeners. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm so excited for this conversation, and just our connection has been so deeply healing and activating and enlivening for me. So I'm so excited to be here. And my name is Tanin, and I'm a trauma-informed spiritual healer and teacher. I've been on this journey of awakening for the last 10 years, and it has been really interesting for me. It's taught me so many things about what I wish I knew at the beginning of my spiritual journey. So, all of the things that I've studied over the last 10 years, I've condensed into a certification program for trauma informed spiritual healers. And that's been my life's work. And I'm so grateful for the journey. I'm going to share some of the more, like intense experiences that I've had on the journey, especially relating with community and the ruptures that I've had in community. But that's a little bit about me on a high level of what I do and my passions in the world.
Yeah. Incredible human, multidimensional healer. And just, it's been really fun because I've had this happen several times in my life where like I will connect with someone briefly and then I will just have these like downloads and these visuals of like there's some deeper connection there to explore.
Yeah.
And I had that so strongly with you. Like we had only met a few times. Austin met you first like 2 years ago, but then it took a little while for us to connect.
Yeah.
And it was just a really beautiful natural process, but I had gotten several like just visions of connecting and knowing that there was something deeper there to explore and allowing life to show us when the time was for that to happen, and it did. And now I'm like, wow, this is why we have very similar backgrounds also in terms of who we were back in the day in high school and college.
Party girl extraordinaire.
Yes. And then, you know, how that has evolved into the healing work that we do now, and just the life path that we have chosen and that we're on. And so it's really beautiful to continue to witness that unfolding and just trust the divine orchestration of life bringing people into your world that have medicine for you, right? And that are here to expand you. And so it's been really fun to connect and learn from you too. And something beautiful that has been newer is like you coming into community, you know, and exploring connections with the people that I have formed bonds with over the past few years. And so I'm curious to hear a little bit about what that's been like for you. And I know it's activated some old wounds as well. So tell us a little bit about where you're at with community.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting when I first met Austin 2 years ago, I was just embarking on my ayahuasca journey and study. And the first time I sat with the medicine was a little over 2 years ago. And immediately I felt this deep call and resonance to study with her for a period of time. And so I had sat in 9 different ceremonies, 2-night ceremonies over the span of 2 years, which I wouldn't recommend for most people. It is a lot, and it required a lot of integration and honestly isolation, because I was transforming and going so deep within myself and really like unearthing so much trauma and darkness from my lineage, from my own trauma. I had a lot of childhood trauma. And so, when Austin met me, he's like, you have to meet Lilly. He was like, you have to meet Lilly. He would text me like,
biggest hype man.
He was literally the number one hype man. And I just was not in a place where I felt
Yeah.
like I had the capacity to really be in relation with other people. And so now we're on the other side of that journey. And yeah, it's been interesting for me coming into community because I've been in spiritual communities before. You know, I've over the last couple of years, I've been in an array of different spiritual communities, and I actually haven't felt fully safe. And you know, whether it's people projecting their judgments on you, and I'm a reflector in human design, so I can feel everything, and my system is incredibly sensitive to the projections of other people. And so I would feel judgments of me, or you know, especially when we're all on this like awakening journey and we're learning tools and things like that, we're going to judge other people, we're going to project things. And I didn't know fully how to navigate that at the time. And so I felt very unsafe. And so I isolated a lot. And I also, you know, as my gifts were emerging, I didn't always feel safe in community to be fully myself and express the things that were coming up because they were so literally out of this world and multidimensional and wild. You know, I'm like channeling Jesus and clearing my grandmother's trauma because she's coming through me, like my mediumship gifts and all of these things were coming online. And I would share that, and I didn't always feel received by people in that. And so I just didn't feel safe. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go on my own inner journey. And working with ayahuasca for the last 2 years anchored, like, this is who I am. And it provided this strength and knowing of who I am. And it's like, I mean, she's literally the roots of the earth, you know, she's made of roots. And so she, for me, strengthened the roots of my soul into my body so that I could go out in community and people could judge me, people could project on me. And I felt so strong in who I was. And so now that I'm like entering into community, it's bringing up for me an interesting timeline. You know, like we resonate with this like party girl timeline, you know, and I love her. I love this part of myself because she's emerging now in community. And I'm like, I actually think we all need conscious partying and play. Like, I think that's such a deeply needed expression, at least for me personally. And to do it in a way that feels safe and integrated and grounded and respecting whatever you're utilizing. You know, if you're choosing to work with plant medicines, that there's prayer and there's respect. You're not just using it to become unconscious because you feel nervous to be connected with other people. You're using it to actually like open your heart and ground yourself and like be more authentically expressed. So you know, as I've been playing in these spaces together, and it's brought up for me this timeline of me in my early 20s where I was possessed by a demon. And it's kind of wild for me to like even talk about this on a podcast.
Things are gonna get weird, people.
Things are gonna get weird.
But in the best ways.
Yeah, because it's something that I'm actually really passionate about speaking to because you know, when this happened to me, I was in college. It was my sophomore year of college, and it happened through a sexual experience, and it was a violation. And when it happened to me, you know, when you're in party culture, it's like everyone's hooking up and you're just kind of like, oh, okay, that happened. I'll just shove it under the rug. I was probably too drunk or whatever. And it was actually deeply traumatic. And because of the culture that I was in Greek life, and it was just so part of the norm that I just shoved it under the rug and like pretended everything was okay. But at that point, I started to act differently. And I started to notice that when I would go to parties, it was the wildest sensation, but like it literally felt like something would overtake me and like pull me into situations and like pull me into these really traumatic situations, get me so blacked out that I like didn't even remember. It was like, yeah, I partied hard. And then it got to a point where it was like, I lost control, and
like it's not you anymore.
It wasn't me anymore. And I thought it was me for so many years. I was like, what is wrong with me? There was so much shame. And, you know, when I like, there's different types of entities. And I learned this from one of my mentors. And when I had an exorcism 3 years ago, he's like, you had what he considers a level 4, which is like demonic possession. And I felt it. And I've had conversations with my parents about it to like integrate. And they were like, this actually makes so much sense. And because they saw where it was like, I was just like so vibrant, so alive. I had so many friends and like so many beautiful connections. And then all of a sudden, like I lost everybody in my life, and I didn't understand what was happening to me or like why people didn't want to hang out with me. But I also was like, why am I showing up in these ways? And it was really confusing and disorienting. And so coming into community now, where I'm like playing and partying, and my heart and my soul is like open and alive, and I'm like experiencing people be like, yo, you're fucking dope, I love you. And I'm like, oh my God, like I'm back. You know, I'm back, and I feel that. And you know, I had my exorcism 3 years ago, and it took like probably 2.5 years for me to really be like back in my own fully, and to heal from all the traumas that happened. Because in that process, I was brought in, literally pulled into this like really toxic narcissistic relationship. And like everything that happened in those 7 years was just to traumatize me more and more. So I built up so much trauma in my body from that timeline. So yeah, that's like a little bit of like my community trauma is like, you know, there's still friends from high school and college that I haven't talked to in 8-10 years. And like, because like, I just like went off the deep end, and like something happened to me and I wasn't myself. And how do you go back to those people and be like, sorry, I was like possessed by a demon. I'm back now. Sorry, I was crazy. Like, you know, so yeah, there's like this whole integration process that I'm going through in this moment around that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's not a conversation you can have with everyone.
Yeah.
But I mean, and for me too, like I didn't really even know anything about entities and demons until really I started. I mean, I'd heard about them and whatnot, but I never really explored that at all until I met you. And so for the listeners who are also like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about what that even means, and what, you know, how we can start to just notice if that might be something happening within us, like this whole concept of entities, and how much more common it is than we may think.
Yeah. So there's different types of entities, and it's interesting because I had an exorcism 3 years ago by this guy named Ethan, and his work is under holographic flow. And when he took the entity out of me, he reflected to me like, your soul has done this before. It like understands these realms. And at the time I was like, what? And not too long after that, when I started doing hands-on healing work on people, I was pulling entities out. And so I've experienced an array of entities. And based on his work, on Ethan's work, and how he's explained it to me, and I'm going to like bring in a subtle nuance of some things that I've also felt, is like, there's disembodied spirits. So these are people that were once human that didn't fully cross over. So someone that had a drug overdose, for example, you know, when the soul is crossing over, it's not fully conscious. And so those spirits can actually live on this plane: drug overdose, car accident, freak accident, you know, or even if it's like someone that's dying, that's really attached, maybe they're really attached to a loved one or something like that, and they don't want to leave. Their soul remains on this plane. And so we can have an entity attachment that's a disembodied spirit. That could be like a sweet grandma, you know, it could be like it could be like a very loving spirit that actually just didn't cross over. But what's interesting is like when those spirits are attached to you, their unprocessed trauma starts to try to like liberate through you, and you still don't really fully feel like yourself, because there's literally a consciousness that's not you, that's attached itself to you. And if you're not and a lot of people don't have the awareness access or skill yet to really discern the subtle frequencies of like what's them, what's not them, right? So there's disembodied spirits. There's also demonic entities, and these are they were never human. They were actually brought into this realm, this 3D realm, through some sort of dark magic situation. And so that's what I had. And I'm really unfamiliar of like how that works, of like how do they come in, and like, you know, I haven't really studied. I would not say I'm like a master of understanding the realms of like how these entities work. I just am very masterful at tracking them in people's systems. I can feel a subtle frequency of something that's not them, and I can clear that. What's also really interesting in just in clearing work that I've done with people is like they can create agreements with dark entities from past lives that can linger into this life. That's actually what I felt with you.
Yeah.
If you want to speak to that experience.
Well, before, we'll get into my experience in a moment. And I mean, you know, just to put this out there, like I was pretty skeptical about this. Like I'm a very open person. I feel like once you're on the spiritual path and you've done enough work, and especially if you've you know used plant medicines, like you just realize how much you just don't know and how much more is out there, right? But and so I'll share my experience in a moment with this, but before we do, would you say that like the main feeling, I guess speaking for yourself and people you've worked with, is like this sense of like this isn't me, there's a part of me that like feels like it's just not me and it's controlling, or how else could it be experienced?
Well, it's interesting because it's like there's also like these energies that are kind of entity like, where it's like, you know, when you go into like a gas station or a dive bar and like all of a sudden the energy is just like and you can like feel like it's like dark and grimy and you're like, what just happened? So like there can also be like just dark consciousness like lingering in those fields, and you leave and you feel kind of like lethargic and like like, right? And you take a shower and like sometimes you feel better, and there's ways to cleanse your field and that way. But like, yeah, it's really interesting with these entities, and because one of the methodologies in my certification that I teach, it's called the chains, and it's an acronym, and there's 3 A's, and it's childhood trauma, habits, addictions, attachments, ancestral trauma, illusions of the ego, which is like these different personality patterns that distort, negative thoughts and emotions, societal conditioning, or spiritual possession. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because sometimes you can feel an emotion or like feel an energy that doesn't feel like you, but it's actually an ancestral imprint, right? So like you could be carrying the wounds of like your grandfather, you know, like I was clearing some of that stuff this week, or like your mom or your dad or like your lineage. And so being able to really refine, and the thing is like awareness knows, like we have this skill of awareness, but it takes practice to first to understand what is your thinking mind, I call it your rational mind, and what is your awareness, right? So like when you're asking, what is this energy from your awareness, and you're asking, is this an ancestral trauma, you can kind of feel like a resonance in your body of like, yeah, this is ancestral. And you're like, okay, is this my mom? No. Is this my dad? Yeah, it's coming from that line. So when you have a body connection and a really strong connection living as awareness, you can really start to track your field really precisely. And that's like a development, that's part of what I teach. But I would say like when you're working with an entity in your system, you're going to feel there's an energy moving through you that does not feel like you. And it's gonna like it, if you're working with like a demonic entity, it's gonna want to like hurt you, and it's gonna want to hurt the people around you. That's what was happening with me, and that's why I literally lost pretty much all of my friends and most of my relationships, because it was like I would like say things and do things that would like hurt people in these subtle ways. And so I would say like with demonic entities, it's like, yeah, it like you kind of feel overtaken, and like it can feel really disorienting because you're like, why am I doing this? And they actually feed off of your shame and your anger and your fear. And so they actually create more shame and anger and fear in you, and that's how they take a grip over you. And like I think the reason why I was able to have the exorcism when I was like I had such a deep connection with God and such a deep connection with source that I could feel that I could, like when I was going in that process, I was like, this isn't me. Like I know the truth of who I am, and I know the truth of God, and that powerful connection I have with God is actually what allows me to do the clearing work. So it's not even me that's doing it. Honestly, I'm working with Jesus 99% of the time. And he's showing me like what like the entity is, how it's wrapped in their bodies. Like sometimes it's like wrapped in your organs. And I know when I had mine, I like felt it in my hip, and like it's like there was like a part of my body that felt like no matter how much yoga I did, it was just like dense, and like I couldn't connect to those parts of my body. Yeah, and you'll like I would hear a voice and it didn't sound like me, and it was like mean. And so like when I would do parts work with myself, and even when I do parts work with a client, when you have a protector part, even if it's like mean and it's like really critical of you, ultimately at the core root, that part is trying to keep you safe from something. So like the deepest intrinsic motivator is to like keep you safe, or like there's a positive, but when you're working with an entity part, it has malicious intent. And so it's like, yeah, I just want to kill you. Like, I just want you to die. Like, and it's like, okay, why do you want me to die? And it's like, it has malicious intent where it's like, I want you to die so you're out of pain, for example. Like you may have a protector that's suicidal. Like I just all of a sudden became suicidal out of nowhere because this entity was like feeding into my thoughts. And so it's like such a fine line. And I just don't think like worthy. I read this book. It's called The Others Within Us by Robert Faulkner. Faulkner. I think I'm definitely butchering his last name. Sorry. But you can look at, he's been studying entities through parts work and through internal family systems model. And it's really interesting when you start working with these, when you start recognizing these through the parts work lens. And one of the things that he says in the book is like, we're the only society, Western culture is like one of the only societies that does not acknowledge these in mental health. And that's one of the things that I feel like my story is here to like bring forward and just bring a new lens of like, you know, when you go to China, you go to like all of these other countries and they're healing, like they incorporate the fact that entities are real in their healing process. And we just don't have that in modern day mental health. And just going through my own experience, I'm like, we're doing a disservice, I think, to a lot of people by not at least having a conversation or being open to it. So,
and I think there's so much, I mean, I guess I can speak for myself, but there's a lot of fear around even like speaking about that.
Totally.
And I think that that's part of the conditioning we received through like the scary movies, right? The exorcisms and whatnot that like makes this very scary thing.
Yeah.
But how common would you say this is? Because I'm starting to think that it's a lot more common than we may imagine. And it doesn't have to be this huge, scary thing that you see in the movies of this like crazy. I mean, it's intense, but
yeah, it can look like the movies. That's for sure. When I've done clearings on people, I'm like, it looks like the movies sometimes, for sure. And one of my mentors really advised me. He was like, I would not go down this path. He literally advised me, do not go down this path. He's like, you don't know what you're getting yourself into. And it's true. I've had experiences that have been extremely traumatizing. And so I'm learning a really strong level of discernment within myself. And like, there's clearly a dharma for me here.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm learning where the boundary of that is. And I don't think that it's a place that people should play into unconsciously and just go and like explore. I will tell you that it's definitely like when I do medicine ceremonies with people, when I do clearing work on them, it is, I would say, like most people that I've put my hands on, I've cleared an entity out of. Um, Most people, not all. And I would say it is a lot more common than we realize. And I don't say this to like scare people, but just to bring in awareness, of like possibility, and for people to really just sit in contemplation. And I think one of the things I really love about Robert's work and the book, The Others Within Us, is like one of the things is he's like, I just want to like actually make this not so scary, and like how do we like normalize this, and how do we navigate this so that we can actually just heal more people. Because ultimately when we're clear of these things and we can feel free within ourselves, like I sense a lot of the mental health epidemic that's happening, that there's a lot of people that are being influenced by these entities, and they go into therapy and they go into these modalities, and like nothing is working for them because it's not actually touching the truth of what's happening here. And you can like loop for decades in your stuff, and because you're not actually recognizing that it's not you. So
yeah, I feel like it can offer a lot of relief for people who are like, have done so much work and they're like, this isn't who I am, but there's no solutions. And I feel like if we don't have these conversations, then it just creates so much shame and isolation. And that's ultimately what, causes people to like really spiral. And so.
And that's what they want. Honestly, one of the things that I recognize with entities is they want to isolate you, and they want you to feel disconnected from yourself, because then they can source your power. And that's what gives them life, is like when you're lifeless, and
that's crazy.
It's crazy. And it's just one of those things where when we learn, like one of the things I'll say is like, if you're listening to this conversation and you're like freaking out of like, oh my God, do I have an entity? The deeper connection that you have to a power greater than you, call it God, call it source, call it spirit, whatever it is, when you anchor your faith into that, and love, ultimately, like they can't penetrate love. And so much of my journey has been, part of why I study Jesus and unconditional love is like Christ consciousness is like this impenetrable force that purifies them. And in order for me to even do this work, like I have to be really pure in my channel, in my heart, in my connection with God. And so the more that you anchor in love and compassion, even if you feel it in you, of like, I'm going to have love for you, instead of like being like, oh my God, it's in me, I'm afraid, because that feeds it. So just offering that, and you can reach out to me, and I'm here, and I'm happy to like answer questions, because like I don't want to like scare people into like a hysteria, but really want to empower you into like your own healing and what's possible for you if you are feeling it.
Yeah. So with that,
your experience?
My experience I'll share.
Yeah.
Which I haven't even actually sat down and like really processed with you.
Yeah.
Unplanned. We were hanging out. We did a little bit of a plant medicine ceremony together, and yeah, we had kind of opened that conversation. But something that I really appreciate about you is that you really are so in tune with the field and the person that you're with, it seems. And it just felt very natural. And I think I was like kind of stretching and kind of down in a certain position, and that's when I felt you come up, and it felt like a very natural process. I felt really safe. And it's been really interesting for me, because something that I've noticed over the past probably 2 years or so is more of like my own awareness of energy work come online that I haven't actually intellectually studied, but like just have felt come online more. And I'm starting to realize, oh wow, I think that this is a part of my path. But in myself, and specifically, I've had like 3 or 4 really distinct moments where I've just I've basically done like energy work on myself, but it's been so intense and I haven't understood it. But the more that I allow my body to just do its thing, it's like it's clearing something, and it's wild. This happened to me at a festival and at Unison a few years ago at a sound healing. It happens a lot when I'm around certain frequencies, but a lot of it comes through my throat, and my jaw will like start to like recalibrate, and like it's like, it's creepy when you think about it just from the mind, but when you actually feel into like, oh, we're all energetic beings and energy is just always moving. And if we don't allow it to move, then it just kind of gets stuck. At least that's how I understand it. But yeah, I guess I'll kind of just like pass it over to you, because I can't even really understand what happened, but essentially you pulled something out of my field. And it was very interesting. And it was interesting because at times my mind would come in and be like, what the fuck is happening? But then like the more I like allowed, I've done enough work to be able to like play with my awareness, and the more that I actually just brought it into like the actual experience, I was like, yes, like it wasn't a performance. And that was really interesting, because I don't know, I have a skeptic mind sometimes, and if I witness that in other people, I'm like, to what degree are they performing?
Totally.
You just don't know until you're in it.
And I have experienced a lot of people reflect back to me. They're like, I've had a lot of energy work done before, but I've never felt it the way, like I could literally feel you like in my organs and like pulling something out. And so it's like, I think until you have an embodied experience of it, the mind's going to be skeptical, you know, until I literally felt something wrapped in my organs and come out of me. I was like, what is reality? I literally, like, my whole reality shifted in that moment. And that's what I felt with you is like, what's interesting is like when we were in the medicine journey, this is what happens to me when I work with people. I start to see where it is. And so I'll get like, it's like a clear knowing, and it'll like, something will speak to me, and it'll tell me where it's living in your system, and it'll show me exactly how to clear it out of you. And yours was definitely like an interesting way of extraction.
Oh my God.
And it like, so with you, like, I just like, I saw the vision, and I think I asked you, I was like, are you open to me clearing something, and like, I always want to be attuned to the person and have consent, because it is like a very intimate experience of me going into your system. And so, I would say like, for you, what I was feeling, it's really interesting because yours felt ancient. It like didn't feel like sometimes we can make, like, Robert talks about this in the book, The Others Within Us, where it's like when you're like a lonely child and you're like isolated or you're scared, like these beings can kind of like come when you're a child, because we're so much more open and attuned to the greater field. And so you can make friends with them and they can attach themselves to you. Yours felt ancient from like a past life. Like, and so when I was clearing it out of your field, I was actually feeling like Egyptian timelines. I was like seeing the pyramids. And so I was like, okay, I could feel it was from that timeline. And when I cleared it out of you, immediately I felt like part of your soul also come in. And, what was really interesting, this happens sometimes when I clear like an entity out, if there's a soul fragment. So like, if the soul experiences an extreme trauma, whether it's this lifetime or past lifetimes, and yours felt like it was like the Egyptian, something happened to you around your healing gifts, right? And it was something came into you. And so, yeah, I like brought a part of your soul back into your body. And it's been cool because like I've been seeing you on Instagram and I'm like dropping these subtle hints. I'm like, oh, your energy is like so lit now. And you didn't even like put two and two together. I was like, yeah, boo, there's like no longer an entity in you and a part of your soul came back. And like I've been feeling your vibrance and your like radiance and like more of your soul luminosity just like expressing.
Yeah.
And like you feel more free.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really do. And it's so funny because until today I was like, oh yeah, that happened kind of around the same time. Like I don't know, I didn't connect the dots, but yeah, I have felt over the past few weeks definitely more light, more free, more expressed, happier.
Yeah.
And you know, the way that you explained it too, with like this heaviness and this kind of like, yeah, I felt in my system like I just felt like weighed down.
Yeah.
And even my posture was very like protective.
Yeah.
And I know parts of that is from childhood too, you know, our survival patterns and whatnot, but it is interesting to feel the difference.
Yeah.
And I would have never freaking thought, like, I haven't had like extreme trauma. I mean, we've all experienced trauma in our childhood, but it wasn't, you know, nothing that would make me think like, oh, wait, maybe there is something there to explore. But, you know, hopefully that like helps to like normalize it a little bit. And,
And that's why like my soul has evolved into like multi-dimensional trauma healing because like you said, it's like I haven't had extreme trauma, but like phone. Sorry guys. Yeah, it's like even if you haven't had extreme trauma, your soul, like you're wise and you're ancient, you know? And it's like I felt that from the moment that I met you. And so it's like it may not be from this lifetime that you're carrying this weight and this pain. And it's like you come into this life feeling that heaviness. And that's why, you know, doing this like multi-dimensional work, it's like, oh my God, you could do parts work with your inner child all day. But if you're not touching the soul level of your field, like this is something that I teach my students. It's like we have our physical bodies and then we have our emotional body and then we have our mental body. And oftentimes when you're in therapy or like doing subconscious work, like you're working like those bodies, right? But then you have your soul body and then you have your divine blueprint, which is like your divine will. And then you have your spiritual emotional body. And these are all correlated to the chakras. So like your spiritual emotional body is related to your third eye. And then you have your divine body. And so like we can have traumas that are living in our spiritual emotional bodies that are impacting our soul's ability to fully radiate and like fully express out into the world. And this is where I feel like I'm so excited to continue to like have these types of conversations because I feel like there's going to be an evolution in the next decade where it's like, okay, we've done the mindset work and we've realized mindset work can only go so far. And then we get into somatics and then we realize somatics can only go so deep. And that's where spiritual healing work, I think, is going to really come forward and support people in actually embodying their full soul essence and like us all connecting on a soul level rather than just the emotional level or the mental level. And like when I connect with people on like a soul level, it's so deeply nourishing and fulfilling. And like imagine having a community of people that are like all meeting at soul with their hearts open. Like I have chills.
Yeah.
It's so good.
That's literally the new earth.
Yeah, that's exactly like that's what we're encoding here. And one of the things that I realize is like we've been conditioned by our logical minds. So like if the logical mind doesn't understand it, then you're not actually going to be able to surrender to the truth of it. And trust me, like I have a very strong logical mind. I like studied to work on Wall Street. And so like I'm very analytical. Like
a long way.
I did not come out of the womb like super spiritual like this. And so when I started my spiritual path, that's why I studied the auric field and like quantum physics, and like I had to understand like the logic behind spirituality to trust it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. Like there's a level of the mind's trying to keep you safe.
Totally.
So if it doesn't understand something, it's like very hesitant to dive into it.
Totally.
And so, and then what's cool is like through quantum physics, like we are starting to slowly make sense of things a little bit more.
Yeah.
But it's not until you have your own deep spiritual experiences that you're like, oh, okay. Like my mind is expanded beyond what I ever thought possible, you know, and you start to just see life in a much like 4D, 5D way.
Yeah. I mean, they say it's like the only true path to living as an awakened being is through direct experience. You could study spirituality all day long. You could read every text, but until you have the direct experience of expanded awakened awareness or the direct experience of an entity clearing out of you, do you actually know this reality through your experience, you know? So it's like, yeah, there's, and I've gone through the whole evolution where I just sat and studied books all day long, and I'm like still stuck in all of my stuff because and that's again the power of community and the beauty of like having these direct experiences with people instead of just sitting alone, isolated, like reading our books. It's like we're together and we're expanding each other through our gifts, through having direct experiences of this multidimensional lens together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And being able to hear someone else's personal story, like expands you tenfold more than reading it from a random book, right? Yeah. Like if I would have read about entity clearings in a book, I would have been like, okay, maybe like, I don't know. But like actually hearing your experience and feeling you embodied in that is like, oh, immediately I'm like, there's something there, right? And so I love how we're bringing community back into this because, you know, we talked earlier too about the power of, you know, reintegrating the party girl is one way of saying it, but really just like anything that brings you pleasure and joy, healing through pleasure and joy. Like a lot of my healing, and I know, I imagine for you too, was like, you know, do it through isolation, do it through reading, do it through like therapy, and just, you know, really trying to like go inward and do that. And I think to some extent, like there's a period in everyone's life where that is needed while you're still like cutting ties with who you used to be in your old life and before you've found your new one. But it gets to a point where like that can actually only go so far.
Yeah.
And so much of my healing has come through like letting loose a little bit and actually going and experiencing life.
Yeah.
It's wild. And community is such a big part of that because like we mentioned earlier, we were talking about how everyone is like a mirror for you.
Oh yeah.
You know? Whereas when you're isolated, you're not getting triggered. You're not putting yourself into uncomfortable situations, and you're also not being expanded into like someone reflecting what your gifts are and communicating those back to you so you can actually, you know, really recognize how powerful you are. So let's talk about that a little bit more.
Yeah, you know, one of the things about what you were just speaking to, like I do think that it's so good to always have a balance of solitude and connection. You know, even when you're in community and you feel embodied, like always having some space to come back into yourself and come back into your center is so important. And what you're speaking to of like community, it's like that's when the mirrors and like you can be in solitude and learn all the tools to then apply it.
That's
you know, that's the goal. It's like I feel like sometimes we've forgotten because our species has evolved into mass individualization. It's like everyone's living on their own, they have their own job, I'm paying my own bills, and we've forgotten that we're like a tribal species. You know, it's like and we wonder why we have so much like mental and emotional health issues. It's like we're actually not meant to be alone. And I think sometimes we're scared of the mirror.
Oh yeah.
You know, we're scared of the different types of mirrors because we don't know how to handle it. And I know we were talking about this earlier, but one of the frameworks that I was teaching is like there's these different ways that people mirror us.
Mm-hmm.
And it's helpful for me to like have this understanding of like, you have certain people that are like a clear mirror. Like I feel like in this moment, like we are like clear mirrors for each
Mm-hmm.
other, where it's like we both feel really integrated, and like our connection is just like I'm reflecting your soul
Mm-hmm.
back to you, you're reflecting my soul back to me, and there's this like really beautiful harmonious connection, and it
Mm-hmm.
feels really nourishing.
Yeah.
And then like literally an hour later, like because the thing is the mirrors change all the
Yeah.
time. Like you could say one thing that triggers me,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, one of the things that I talk about is there's like shadow
Mm-hmm.
mirrors, which like I'm seeing you, and like one of the things that I feel like you're very integrated in is community. And so if I had not integrated this part that's like open to being in community, that could really trigger my shadow, my disintegrated part of
Yeah.
myself, you know? And so sometimes we get triggered because we see other people and they're really integrated maybe in their power or their pleasure or their play, you know? And it's
Mm-hmm.
like they trigger you because they have integrated something that's not integrated in yourself. And then there's also like the wound mirror. And so like so there's like the disintegrated part, and then maybe there's someone that comes up and they're triggering a wound, like a childhood wound, like something that happened to you, and they're the way that you guys are relating reminds you of your dad and how your dad abandoned you and wasn't there. And so it's triggering that piece. And really, that's like a frozen part of you that has an unmet need. That when you learn that, oh, I just have a need right now, and how can I
Mm-hmm.
communicate that authentically? Of like, it would feel really good if we could
Mm-hmm.
just strengthen our communication, and like let that wound actually, that wound mirror, be an opportunity to heal it
Mm-hmm.
if you have community that can meet you in that. And then the last mirror that I talk about is soul mirrors. And those are people, maybe it's like a mentor that you have or someone that's like really embodied
Mm-hmm.
in a soul quality that you know is an aspect of your soul. Like these people like tend to inspire you. It's like, you know, maybe there's like someone that's just really fully authentically expressed and they're living their purpose and they're mirroring to you like that's me, and they're calling you forward in your gift, in your power, in your aliveness, whatever it is. And there's like a like an activating energy when you're around them, and it's really beautiful. So it's like when we learn how to like understand the different mirrors of like shadow work is like, okay, I got to do some work. Wounded mirror is like, okay, there's like a need that I could ask this person to help meet, and like learning how to dance with people and like finding people that have enough embodiment within themselves and willingness to like show up for you in that. I think that is like so beautiful, and the rate at which you can heal and expand when you have
Mm-hmm.
people like that is just like exponential.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you've had so many, like, I've just watched you and like being in your community in this short amount of time. One of the things I deeply feel with all of you is how you all have so much depth
Mm-hmm.
to you. And it's such a reflection of how deep you go with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of depth can't always be cultivated on your mat by yourself. Like that depth of love
Mm-hmm.
is cultivated by deeply loving other people.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's so, I mean, it's completely transformed my life,
Mm-hmm.
and it's allowed me to go so much deeper than I ever thought was possible.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's beautiful because it just keeps calling in people who are at that level and ready to go to those depths. And
Yeah.
even those that are like they want that but they're a little bit afraid, the safety of like other people going there and
Mm-hmm.
witnessing that, to see how quickly that opens someone up, is really beautiful.
Yeah.
And I think that that is our permission, right? In our yeah, part of our like our medicine is to be able, like, when you experience that and have that capacity to go to those depths because you've created the safety within yourself to trust that you can go there,
Yeah.
with certain people, to be able to like be a permission slip for others and like open up more and like let others meet you there is something really beautiful. Like I've played with that a lot with my family and different friends who haven't fully experienced that yet, and just, you know, without any pressure, it's just like, can we open up more? And through that invitation, it like lets other people mirror that, because we're such mirrors for each other without even knowing it. We're like, oh, my body is like actually feels safe, and it's like, yeah, there's a resonance that you feel the safety in someone else's body, and that it allows you to open.
I feel like that's like your deepest magic that I've experienced is like you have this incredible embodied love and heart and safety that you've cultivated that allows people to like come in and feel safe to fully be themselves. And it's so beautiful. Like I've noticed that just in our connection of just like you're so embodied and like whatever is and I will meet you there. And then you have this little like seductive like, and come play and like let's go a little deeper.
It's just so fun. I'm like, I feel, yeah, thank you. I really, that really lands. And it's beautiful because I've just always been such a deep feeler, you know, like so, and it was something that I pushed away for a long time and tried to distort and manipulate it to be in this certain way that I thought was how people wanted it, and to just allow myself to actually feel in all the ways. And the more that I have learned to like accept that for myself, the more that I can actually like be like a permission slip for others too. And it's like what I love the most. I'm like, I want people to, I want to see all of you. Like, it's so, I find it all so beautiful. Like just the depth of the human capacity to feel all of it, and the rawness of it is like what I just find the most attractive thing in the world.
Yeah.
Like I want to see all fucking parts of you, you know?
Totally. And it takes like, it takes you having met all parts of yourself and loving all parts of yourself to hold that for people, you know, because it's like one thing to say it of like, I just want to see all parts of you. But then when the ugly comes out,
you're like,
and then you're like, I don't know if I can handle that, you know, but like, I really feel the truth of your heart and your ability to meet the depth of all of someone. And like, you actually see the beauty in every single part of them. It's so amazing.
It's you know, I've experienced so much. I've seen people in so much suffering in my life, and I still see it. I mean, there's just so much suffering out there, and I just and I think so much of the suffering is just this deep shame that we shouldn't be feeling this bad, or this grief, or the shame, and so we push it away, and it fucking gets big and nasty and like scary. And I'm like, if we turn towards it and see it for what it is, which is usually a wounded part that is just asking for love and is so scared and afraid, like it just dissolves it so fast. And that has been so healing for me. And so yeah, it's so interesting though. Like this whole entity thing has really like messed with my brain now, because I'm like, how do you know that? I mean, I guess you mentioned it a little bit earlier where like the wounded parts still have a good intention, and I guess the entities are more malicious.
Yeah, there's also, I mean, this is for people that have the ability to really feel subtle energy. You can feel when someone's in their heart, there's a certain vibration and resonance when you feel the essence of their soul frequency, right? Like there's a resonance that's them. And then you can feel like when I'm talking to someone and then the entity comes online, the field gets sharp and harsh and intense. And it's different than like a protector. It feels, because there are some protective strategies that people have that are really sharp and intense and just like, don't get it. But I can still feel the essence of them in the sharpness. And when I feel the entity overtake, I can really see it in their eyes. That's like, it's the window to the soul. And so I really see it in their eyes, and I can feel the frequency shift in the field where it no longer feels like them. And so it takes a high level of like skill and awareness of tracking energy to really be able to feel that subtlety. But when you do, and also when it's like with my students, like I've cleared entities out of people like on Zoom. Like it's wild, and I'm like teaching their awareness to like, can you track what's in their field and can you feel what that frequency feels like? Because once your awareness is pointed to it, it's like, oh, that's what that feels like, you know? So there's like a learning process, but I'll say like that's one of the things is you'll see their eyes shift, and it's like super subtle, and you can feel the energy field shift when, and it feels like a totally different frequency.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah. And it's like, yeah, I mean, this is psychic work. You
Yeah.
know, it's a lot deeper than just like it's hard. I can understand why it's hard to explain even. It's just like you're working with the intangibles. Right?
And being psychic, so like to get a little quantum on you guys, so all energy, like a radio tower, for example, right? It's like, how does your car pick up on a radio station, right? The radio tower is sending out a wave, and in that wave is energy and information. Being psychic is just the fact that I've opened up the center in my brain that can pick up and read energy and information in the field. So when I'm working with a client, I can pick up on some of the things that are happening in their life without them even telling me, because I'm reading their energy field that has information in it. And this is stuff that like quantum physics has been able to like showcase. And Joe Dispenza's work has like a really beautiful ability to like explain energy waves and information and how that all works. But yeah, it's like a deeper, and that's like how I can pick up when things are, you know, past life. I'm feeling it in a certain level of the field. It's in the spiritual, emotional body. And when you've opened up, like some people just have different gifts of seeing. And I actually think we're all psychic.
Yeah.
We just haven't developed the skills and or practiced enough, you know, like these skills have awakened in me through a decade of meditation and practice and study and all of these things. And so if you feel that you have these gifts, you do. And it's just a matter of cultivating them so that you have a greater level of discernment. And I find for me, I'm like so grateful that I have it, because I can go into certain spaces and be like, nope, we're not going there. There's some weird energy that I don't want to dance with. And it's also cool because, you know, if you're making a decision in the future, for example, when you start teaching your awareness how to like go through different dimensions of time and space, I can go into a future timeline and actually feel into if that decision is going to be positive for me or not to invest in this program or do this thing, because I can bring my awareness to that timeline and then feel the resonance in my body. And that's also what I'm doing when I'm helping people clear like ancestral trauma, right? It's like the awareness is bound in a past dimension of time and space. And so what I do is I bring my awareness and then bring your awareness to touch it. And when we're both touching it and able to feel it, that's when it self-liberates itself. And so like, I don't know if you've ever had like someone doing energy work on you and you're like, I don't feel anything.
Yes.
All the time. I'm just kidding.
No, I've had a few.
Yeah. Ultimately, it's like what I do with energy healing is I'm bringing your awareness to the point in time and space, and that's what I was doing with you in your healing, right? I was, and I can do it non-verbally, like I'm meeting your awareness in the field and bringing you there, and then we're touching it, and sometimes I'm guiding, like, can you feel this? Right? And so I'm bringing your awareness there, and that's actually like where the energy liberates, if that makes sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Because the energy is like fragmented or contracted in some way?
Because
Or like,
if you're like thinking, if you're in mental thought, you're like, what am I having for dinner? And someone's like doing energy work on you. It's
You're
like
not
you're not engaged,
connected.
you're not connected in the field. And so that's why I find that like with my healing sessions, when I do work on people, it can be really powerful because I'm tracking where their awareness is. And if their awareness is not where I need it to be for the energy to liberate, I'm like, hey, can you feel this? Right? Like, what does this feel like to you? And I'm just bringing them there so that it can move through their body. Because it's like it's like a co-creative process.
Yeah. Because wherever your awareness is where your energy is flowing.
Exactly.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Interesting. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And it's cool because like sometimes I'm working with people that are very attuned to their systems and it's like we can just dance together in what's happening. And some people I'm guiding them into it. And either way, even they're like learning in the process of like, whoa, this is what I can do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Feeling new layers that you've never even actually touched with your awareness is how I experienced it, at least with you. I was like, oh, interesting. Like I've never actually like focused my awareness on like the energy that's actually like
moving through. Yeah.
That's so interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. So
wow.
This got weird.
I love it. I hope yeah. All right, is there anything else we want to touch on before we start to wrap up?
I feel like so good. I'm curious if you have any questions. I feel like this is just like an incredible opening of conversation of like things that aren't normally talked about and just opening up people's perceptions of what's possible. And I'm curious if you feel like there's anything that you would be wanting to deepen around. I feel like we touched on a lot of juice.
I mean, I think this is this is great. Apparently this is exactly what wanted to happen. And I just think I really appreciate you for having these conversations and also like being willing to go into these, even your mentor was like, I don't know. And you're the type of person that's like, you trust so deeply and you're so connected to source that like you are letting the gifts come online that are like it doesn't seem like you were out seeking it, right? You were like really called into this.
Yeah. I really feel this, it's like a palpable life force that continues to reveal to me that like this medicine needs to get out there, and I'm being really discerning about how I'm sharing it and continuing to caution people to like do not like play in these spaces unless you really understand what you're doing. And like for me, like I have a soul level, like my soul has done this before. It feels really natural to me and it just makes sense. And even I walk with caution in these spaces and I am learning a lot. So I just always want to like offer that, like, be really mindful of like how you're engaging. And if there's questions, like you can definitely reach out to me. And I just feel like these are conversations that need to be had so that we can have deeper compassion for each other too, because being someone that has been possessed, it's like so disorienting and like very confusing because you're not yourself. And like all I really desire is to share my story of like, if this lands with other people, like that they feel a deeper sense of like, wow, okay, maybe it's not me and maybe there's something deeper here for me to look at. And ultimately I just want all souls to be liberated and free in their true expression. So yeah, it's beautiful. It's just, and I think that those people who resonate will resonate. And totally. It's there's so many aspects of healing, especially once we open, beyond our senses and what we have been taught is possible. And I think it's going to become more and more normal. I mean, it already has, right? And so
like, imagine if you grew up in a world where these conversations were normalized and psychic gifts and abilities were, cultivated at a young age. Like, this would be a completely normal conversation and the world would look very different. And I think that that's where we're heading towards, but
we're inching.
Yeah, we're slowly making our way, but it feels really good to have a platform to be able to just like talk freely about this, because it's been your experience and now mine too.
Yeah.
And like, we're here to share our experiences, and it doesn't have to be everyone's truth, but like, for those who this is the exact conversation they needed to hear to take a step forward in the right direction, like, that's what it's about. Like, again, it's different than reading a book from a complete stranger versus hearing someone's personal experience. Like, it expands you. And so, yeah, just an invitation to like trust whatever's alive for you. And if you have questions, we'll put Tanin's info in the show notes. You can reach out to her. We're both an open book and happy to connect. So
yeah. And I love you.
I love you so much. I'm so excited for so much more play. And and you really inspire me, like I mentioned earlier, with just like your deep commitment to like going where you're guided instead of mentally being like, what should I do and what are others doing and what's gonna, like, I have been caught in my mind for a big part of my life, and I feel like it's been really beautiful to be around people who are so like living from the heart and like a deeper knowing.
Soul mirror.
Yeah. And I'm excited to see what comes online. So, all right, you guys. Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning in.
We love you. See you next time.